Hey guys, so today I want to talk about how what you think is your biggest problem with your agency is probably not your biggest problem. And it's funny because a lot of times people think that the biggest issue is just getting more clients. You know, they're like, hey, if I get more clients, it's going to be sunshine and rainbows. I don't have to worry about paying the bills. No more jealousy about all those people who've made it. No more frustration that your bank account is showing the same dismal numbers month after month after month. But you're wrong. And I know this because I experienced it firsthand. So let me explain. At the beginning of last year, 2023, I effectively bought out my business partner. So he was fully out of the business, just waiting for the SBA loan to go through. And I was left with the daunting task of now needing to do everything. I was already doing fulfillment, admin, and marketing, but now I had to do sales on top of it. And so I went all in on sales. Like I hadn't closed a deal in 3 years. And so even though I had 7 years of closing experience, I was really nervous. Things needed to succeed, and it needed to because here I was picking up this massive loan, and it wasn't going to be okay for just running the numbers. It wasn't okay for us to just stay at that level. I needed to grow in order for it to work out. So, again, I went all in. I took all the demos. I listened to them over and over and over again, trying to find ways to improve. I hired a sales consultant, and oh my gosh, I was talking to him multiple times a week, just trying to figure out how to build this sales process from the ground up. And after a month of going insane on this, I succeeded. I went from, in January of last year, I went from closing one out of 20 demos. So I took 20 demos at the beginning of January, I closed one, it's 5% close rate, to in the subsequent weeks, I had an 85% close rate in the beginning of February, and then it leveled off to around 69% through April. So 69%, that was a call to offer rate, or a 45% call to close. So basically 69% of everyone who got an offer, and then 45% of people who just picked up the phone and were speaking with me. So then in April, we got a closer. Over the next couple of months, we were closing more business every single month than we had in like the last half of 2022, before we had revamped this. And as you can imagine, I was on cloud nine. I felt completely unstoppable. I felt untouchable. I'm like, man, after 10 years, after a decade, I finally figured all this out, but I hadn't, because everything just kind of came crashing down. And it started with that marketing partner. There's a video about this, but he basically stole an employee and then about $50,000 of clients, from the company. And that definitely hurt, but we actually had bigger problems. Growing pains doesn't really describe it. All our growth had really kind of killed fulfillment in a way. The growth, it caused, one of our account managers to suddenly quit in the spring. And so then everybody else was getting overworked, and then clients weren't getting the attention that they need. And so, you might be thinking, all right, well, no problem, just hire more people. But that's what we did. And what I realized after I hired the people is that we didn't have the training and processes we needed to really effectively onboard new hires, which meant even further issues with clients, ineffective people on the team. And the thing that really killed me is basically we just crushed our margins because we had just a massive payroll. But at this point, revenue was just kind of hovering at the same point, because even though we're bringing on a lot of clients, we're also starting to lose a lot of clients, which is something we had never experienced in the business before. So after a couple of months of this pain, I was able to finally identify the root cause of the problem and how to fix it. And the core problem I have, and you probably have this problem, but you don't know it, is improper fulfillment systems. So it's how you do the work, it's how you train the people to do the work, and it's how you check up on them to improve their performance. It's those three things. And you might be thinking to yourself, hey, Michael, you're wrong. My fulfillment is great, and that might be the case. But I would challenge you by pointing out that any issues with your process is going to be very, very easy to hide if you're a smaller agency. So if your people have a lot of capacity, if they've been with you for a couple of years, or many, many months, if you've even had the time to be able to train them personally, those are all things that are going to hide the fact of lack of systems it's going to rear its ugly head when you eventually scale your agency. So here are the things that I've been working on the last couple of months in my agency, and these are things that I wish I had worked on my agency 6 months prior to buying out my business partner and 6 months prior to us, having the growth that we've had. So number one is this understanding that you are the executive chef. So you might have heard business advice out there. So like you're the business owner, you've got to work on the high level things in your business. I've gotten that advice personally from a business coach. And while it isn't exactly wrong, there is some nuance to it. And like not getting this nuance can really burn you. So take this analogy. If you're the executive chef, and an owner at a high-end restaurant, who do you want tweaking your recipes? Do you want line cooks tweaking your recipes? Probably not. What about a cook who has a couple of years of experience and has been working with you for a while? Not really. At the end of the day, you want the executive chef. You want the one with all the experience, the one with the taste, to be watching every single ingredient that goes into a dish. And it's the same thing with agency work. Your dish is your product. And the recipe is the collection of SOPs that, go into how you get things done. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about the most minute part of the process. If it's for SEOs out there, how to fill in some citation of an obscure business directory. You need to have your hands even in that. There might be a way that you would fill that out that's going to be slightly different, but those slightly different tweaks, they matter. And then if you compound them, you get all these little ingredients into your dish that maybe you weren't so happy about. If you're outsourcing any of this process work to a senior person on your team, it's possible you're making a huge mistake. And I'm not saying not to delegate. You need to delegate for sure, but you also need to roll up your sleeves and check everything, every single thing about your process. And, just make sure you have a system for figuring out not only how you check everything that goes into the process, but everything that comes out of the kitchen, which brings me to my second point, which is what mechanisms do you have for quality control? So when you're a small agency with just, a couple of AMs that you've personally trained, you probably have a very high quality product. That's what we experienced. However, when a lot of new accounts come in quickly, you need to have the right QC measurements in place to see how that is impacting your team. Are you measuring how fast they're responding to client emails? Are you measuring just basic things about your product? Because if you're not, the only way you're going to know that things have gone awry are when clients start leaving or complaining. And if they're complaining, by the way, it might already be too late. So here's some things that you need to look at. Number one, your Net Promoter Score. So survey your clients regularly to see how satisfied they are with your service. Come up with KPIs to determine the health of every single account. Maybe you're looking at the cost per lead, number of calls generated, number of keywords that are top 10. Anything, it's going to depend on your service, but you need to figure out what are those KPIs and just make sure that you're checking them all the time. And another thing that we're doing right now is measuring time to first value. So thank you, Hormozy, for that suggestion. We're measuring how long from when the client signs to they have their first big win. So you've got to really kind of architect all of this stuff, measure it, and then see, how you can drive that down. So finally, the last thing is measuring upsells and referrals. So if your fulfillment is really strong, really, really strong, you're going to see a lot of upsells and referrals just happen naturally. Ever since we started overhauling the fulfillment system, we've noticed that upsells sometimes actually outpace the new retainer clients that we're bringing on board, which is pretty freaking nuts. And we've had, we're getting upsells in the past, but it's not at the level that we're seeing right now. And so, this is the biggest measure of how well you're doing with a client, because if you're upselling clients, if they're spending more, it means that they're seeing spending more money with you as an opportunity for them to make more money. And to wrap this all up, this is why I really believe that your biggest problem probably isn't sales and marketing. Because if your product was actually at the level that it needed to be, you'd be growing naturally through upsells and referrals. So I hope this has been valuable. See you guys next time.